Good morning, everyone. My name again is Justin Byler. I'm a supervisor in the Data Quality Office. I'm excited to be here today with my friend and colleague and boss, Deb Rodriguez, to collaborate with her on this presentation surrounding getting your data organized. Some of the objectives to kind of lay the groundwork for what we're looking to go over today with you is participants will understand the importance of submitting timely and accurate data. They will also understand that doing so requires a team approach, as well as a well-developed process and well-developed processes, and procedures. Participants will also realize that tasking a single individual with all of the data responsibilities in your LEA is often a method for more hours and resources having to be expended that could potentially come at a higher cost as well as less accurate information. And the main goal is to help you leave here with some tools and information and hopefully a little motivation to work on your existing policies or establish some new policies in the area of data governance. So we thank you for being here. One last kind of bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We do intend on trying to make this presentation a little interactive throughout. So we request that if you haven't already, download some of the all of the handouts that we had in our resources section on the EventSquib website. So that way we can reference those and you'll have those available as we work throughout the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And by process of elimination, I am Deb Rodriguez, and I am the lucky person that gets to lead the team of data analysts and statisticians that collect the data and create reports and report to the federal government for non-financial data submitted to the department. Does anybody have a kid or yourself that has a closet that looks like the one in the picture on the left? I had one of those. And, you know, it comes time and your last minute, you need to leave the house quickly for that game, that event, that performance, just getting to school on time, whatever it happens to be. But there's a specific red jersey, sweatshirt costume that they need. How quickly are they going to find it? Are they going to find it? Obviously, if you look on the right, it's going to be a much quicker, easier job. The difference between the left and the right is probably not a lot of time if it was handled well from the beginning. Those clothes were folded, sorted, and put away instead of just thrown there. I had one of those kids. She's grown now. She has her own house. And the closet did transform. Why? Well, someplace along the way, as she grew, she realized something that's true in our personal lives, and it's true for our data. Organization is a key. It's no different in the data world than it is in our personal world. A place for everything, everything in its place, right from the very beginning. That place for your data is your source system. If that data gets into your source system accurately in the right place, it really will save you time, effort, and money when it comes time to submit that data. We all know the phrase, garbage in, garbage out. We live in a world that is heavily dependent on data, on information. You can exchange those words liberally. Sometimes I deal with people and they say, well, it's not data. It doesn't have to be numbers to be data. Information is data. And how we store it, how we retrieve it, makes a huge difference. It's a good thing that we're not relying on phrases I heard 17 years ago when I first started working at the Department of Education. Well, that's how we always did it. So that's how we're going to do it now. Things have changed for the better. We now take information and we use that information to inform decisions that we make. We use it in the classrooms, Dibbles test to know where a child is scoring in reading, so I know what instruction. Math tests, we all know how this works. It's the same on a larger scale. And if that data is garbage, the results can be skewed. And I'm going to look down and read you some things so I get them exactly right. This is coming from an article that was posted in US News and World Reports in September of 2018. The title of the article is "Incorrect Data Drives Major Education Decisions When the Data's No Good." US News and World Reports reported on a rough year in education data. It challenged the accuracy of federal databases. And for those who may not be aware, the data that you submit to the Department of Education in Pennsylvania is submitted in aggregate to the US Department of Education. So we don't send individual student data, but we send counts of data. And that impacts many things on a federal level, on a state level, and on a local level. The databases are used by researchers. In this pandemic year, we all understand the value of research in helping us understand as an education system what our students have lost over the past year. It informs policymakers. Some of the rules that come out of the Department of Education and other federal agencies and state agencies use this information. Most of all, it informs funding. Inaccurate data can cost you money, and it can be your personal inaccurate data, for example, put into the child accounting collections, or it could be someone else's inaccurate data if you think about how the special education December 1 counts work, and that money is distributed based on the LEAs within an intermediate unit. So it is really important. I'm going to share 4 instances of national situations of bad data, just 4 of many that US News reported in September of 2018. The first one, National Public Radio investigations found that only 11 of the roughly 240 schools that reported a school-related shooting actually experienced one. Think about that. 229 schools are recorded in a federal database for all of eternity, as long as that database is out there, saying they had a school shooting and it didn't happen. You don't want that to be you. I don't want that to be any school in the state of Pennsylvania. A second one, for unknown reasons, the number of districts reporting they were under a federal mandate to desegregate racially imbalanced schools doubled. At the same time, analysis of the individual data showed that there was an 86% drop in the number of school districts showing that mandate. So again, a large number of schools showing that they basically were not providing equitable education, and they actually were. Again, you don't want it to be you. I don't want it to be you. The third one, the District of Columbia had an education scandal. They showed 1 in 3 students earned a diploma in 2017 that shouldn't have. Why? A large part was because attendance data was reported inaccurately and on purpose. That, friends, is a crime. You don't want it to be you. I don't want it to be you. And finally, number 4, While this may seem like the smallest mistake of all, and I'm sure it was a mistake, it definitely had the potential for the worst consequences. A California school district thought it would be a good idea to put a phone number on the back of every student ID. That phone number was for the suicide prevention hotline. I think that was a great idea. The problem? It was the wrong phone number. The wrong phone number was pulled from the source system. What number was actually on the back of that? Kind of embarrassing. It was a phone number for a sex hotline. That's bad enough. Luckily, middle school students, being what middle school students are, someone figured it out and they were all calling this line and information got to the authorities and they were able to fix the error. But think about what would have happened if there was a child at risk who tried to call the suicide prevention hotline and got a sex hotline instead. Bad data has consequences, and Justin and I are here today to give you resources to help you make the job of submitting quality data easier. Justin's going to share some examples within the state.
Thanks, Deb. So yeah, Deb just went through a bunch of federal and national examples. So the natural next question is so what are some areas where we, PDE, Pennsylvania, us, you, need to be concerned of, or some things that we want to definitely think about in terms of areas where bad data could have a very significant impact. First one, graduation rate. Graduation rate is a primary measure used as part of the ESSA plans. And this information drives some of the designations for targeted support that are required under that plan. So having incorrect graduation information could result in your LEA being identified or not being identified for that support. And either way isn't good, because in some cases, if you're identifying it higher, you really need the support. Or if you're identifying it lower, you're potentially taking that support away from someone who may also need it. Not getting credit for rigorous courses of study is another area of information. If information is not submitted correctly regarding that, that information is one of the main elements for our course collection. So there would be a disadvantage to your LEA if that information is not accurate. Economically disadvantaged, or what we often refer to as low income information, impacts a wide variety of subgroups across all types of PDE information and reporting. PVAS, PSSA assessments and Keystone assessments, graduation and dropout rates. We use this identifier in a wide variety of measures, as well as Future Ready PA Index. Teachers also are impacted if this data is incorrect. This information is used for the teacher low-income forgiveness program. And this information is used and reported to the federal government in order to identify schools that are allowed to be considered for this program. In almost every case, if this data is incorrect, we are not able to correct it in the federal directories to allow teachers to qualify for this program if this information is inaccurate. And lastly, PA Secure IDs are the linchpin that connects all the information in our reporting system. Inaccurate PA Secure IDs could have a wide variety of impacts. Student test records would not be linked longitudinally. Child accounting may be inaccurate because you're not getting funding or reimbursement for students that you have, or you may be getting paid twice, which would be an audit finding and could be a problem. So all of this is not meant to scare you. It's just meant to make you understand how important that this is. One last thought in terms of kind of, the garbage in, garbage out data quality model is just to make sure you understand that the deadlines that we establish surrounding all of this drive the concept of trying to get the data as accurate as possible, as timely as possible. Our deadlines are not arbitrary. We take great effort and time to develop our calendar each year in order to set it up that is both meeting all of the deadlines while trying to be as efficient as possible for all parties involved, PD as well as you at the LEA, because the main goal is to save duplicate time and effort across the collections and the data and all the precious resources that we have. Because if we don't have the time to and work off the schedule that we have, that often takes time and resources away from something else. Likely other collections that are coming up. So it's a compounding effect with regards to data quality in terms of the way we've set up timelines, that not having that data accurate and on time impacts the ability to collect other data accurately and on time. So as you can see by the image that I would like to thank our wonderful app support team for, PIMS has grown. So first little exercise we have, and Deb, I'll need your help just to see how many hands we get. If you want to use the raise hand feature, go ahead. We're interested of how many of our participants today that are listening with us have been with PIMS since the beginning. We're curious to kind of see how many of you that this image and this web actually drives home a meeting while I kind of keep going through it as you're working through that. Prior to PIMS being in existence, data was collected in a multitude of what we called siloed systems. They were individually developed applications to collect specifically the one data element that was needed to meet a particular reporting mandate, or data element that was needed to drive a program office need, whether it be special education, assessment, otherwise. What often happened is there was very similar data in those systems collected throughout multiple times of the year and often overlapping times. And what they did is they collected that specific piece of information that was needed at that specific piece of time, but there wasn't any way to link that information. PIMS, on the other hand, it collects individual pieces of information where possible in order to link that information and standardize that information across multiple timeframes and collection. And it enables us to put all of those pieces together like a puzzle so that we can create the picture as we need to over and over without necessarily requiring, the same level of duplicate work over and over, going back to the point before. So as you can see, based on this web, there's a lot of information here, and it's continued to grow over time and over the years. So your immediate reaction to that might be that, as a PIMS administrator, this shows me that I keep getting more and more work every year, which may be true, but it drives home kind of the point. If you don't have a, team to look at this and figure out what elements of your team may be, if you haven't developed that net, what has naturally happened is that as PIMS has grown over the year, that workload has transformed and increased in some capacity as there's been more reporting requirements. But has your team done that? Has the data collection team, the data governance team that you have at your local LEA stayed the same since the beginning of 2009, which is why or 2008, 2009, one of the first years, back in 2007, that time frame. Are you still working with that same team that you had then, or have you transformed and redeveloped and shifted and gotten better about the way you do things as PIMS has evolved, as PIMS has grown? If you're still working with the same approach that you did before, that may be something you want to really reconsider and think about how you can shift that and think about how to do things a little bit differently if your team is still the same as it was over a decade ago.
So as I noticed 28 hands raised there out of close to 400 participants in this session. I'm taking that to mean that there are many people that have not been working with PIMS for the past 14 years, which is fine, which is a good thing. People come and go to different jobs, people retire, things happen. In the very beginning, I'll be honest to say people couldn't wait to transfer out of a PIMS reporting position. I hope it's gotten better over the years with the supports that we've added. The one thing I want to point out for anyone who wasn't here prior to PIMS, the majority of the data collected in PIMS was collected in the past. It was collected in a different system. And the problems began when LEAs identified the job as PIMS versus the job as the data that was being submitted into PIMS. I'm here to tell you what most of you already know. It takes a team. This is not a one-person job. It takes administrators. Superintendents are asked to sign an accuracy certification statement for every data collection. These data collections are not just to check the box and say you've done it. This data is used in multiple places, reported to the federal government, as I spoke about earlier. It informs ESSA, it informs Future Ready PA Index. It informs so many things. And PIMS, when the data is submitted, when you see the accuracy certification statement, that's the place to identify any potential errors and get them corrected before you see this data on a public website someplace. This data is frequently requested by the press. It takes people like your program supervisors and coordinators. Typically, the PIMS person is a person who submits the data. Frequently, their background is in IT, and that's a great background for doing this job. What their background doesn't have, what they don't have from their day-to-day operations is knowledge of how many students are in your school. They're relying on your student information system. They don't know how many special education students there are. Your program supervisors, your coordinators, they can look at aggregate reports of data that's been submitted and let your PIMS administrator know that, yes, this looks correct. And we have seen crazy mistakes. If you've heard me speak on this topic before, you know I always remind you, and this was many years ago, about the school district that submitted and signed an accuracy certification statement, and they had 0 third graders. You don't have to work in that district to know that is just impossible. Not one child in grade 3. We tried to create our ACSs with prior year data in addition to current year data to help give you a clue like, wow, look at that major change. Could that be right? We need building principals to be involved. You need them to look at these reports. Many reports are based on school level data. Your high school principal is the best person to look at your graduation data and find a mistake that's there. We need teachers. Teachers are entering information. Your support staff, your secretaries, they're entering information into your source systems. A student coming in late, that enters directly into your system, even if it's a piece of paper. It's been a few years since I've been teaching. A piece of paper that eventually gets into your system. Don't do what I frequently did. I'd put those pieces of paper in the back of my little black binder that had all the important information, and I couldn't leave school on the last day until it was all entered into a system. That should not happen. It should be in the system, and thankfully, the systems have progressed over the years. So as your student comes into the school building, likely that's an electronic admittance slip, and it's getting right into your system. It's important for your source, your support staff to understand the importance of what they're doing. This is not just get Johnny into class. This is feeding into the money your district is going to get. The same with your teachers. Your HR directors, they're probably entering the data and keeping the source system for all of your staff. Professional staff data is submitted. I know we beat over the head the need about contracted staff, so I'm not going to go there, but it really need the administrators to work on contracts when you source in people through contracts to get the needed information. Your business manager, that they're always a big person in knowing the right information. And last but not least, all of your data stewards, the people that work directly with this information in your district, they all need to be a part of this group. Call it data governance, call it a data team, call it whatever will be accepted in your LEA, but put together that group of people that can truly, if they give up some time, can make this a much easier, better job to make sure that you have timely, complete, accurate data. Getting organized. So what is it I need to do? And now I know I need something, but how do I get from here to there? You want to establish and document standardized processes and procedures. And we have some things we're going to use to help you with that. So it shouldn't be too big of a lift, but you need to know, don't pick up the PIMS calendar and look at it the day before data is due to PDE and say, oh, I need to start working on my child accounting data now. You know, and I picked that one on purpose, you know it is impossible to look at that data a day before it's due and get everything in place. Ideally, you are to ensure that all your data submissions are complete, accurate, and timely. You have processes in place to get that data entered into a source system accurately from the very beginning. You have a group of people that all understand, they've been trained, they understand the importance. I visited a local school district a number of years ago now for a summer data training where they had everyone from the office secretaries to their data director, who was an administrative position in that district, and it was not a huge district, and they were all together being trained on the data, how to use their system, why what they did was important. That's huge. You need to create a communication plan for escalation, resolution, approval, etc. Frequently, you'll get emails back from staff in the data quality office that says things like, hey, you didn't submit any of this type of data. Do you have any? Or we've noticed that the number of students dropped by 20%. Did you really lose 20% of your students? It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. We look at variances to come back and say, just double check. You need a plan for that. You can't begin to develop the plan, as Steve Hernandez was saying, you can't begin to develop the plan when you have the problem. You've got to have a process. How do I proceed when I have data collection issues? You've got to review the accuracy certification statement before that data is signed. Sorry, Justin, I jumped on yours a little bit. I'll let you go.
No, that's okay, not a problem. So a couple more things in terms of getting even more organized. You want to establish, kind of going back to what Deb said, proactively your internal calendar for data submissions and thinking through the work that you need to do locally in order to have those prepared. The biggest thing also to note here is it needs to be flexible. It needs to account for changes when, case in point, this past year, changes have arisen requiring new data elements, new types of collections that were not necessarily planned as through the normal annual proactive change process that we have in place for data collections. There will be needs for accountability to be flexible across the board, just given the circumstances we are now facing every day. So everybody's planning needs to be flexible enough to account for when things change and when things shift and be as proactive as possible in order to work with those changes. And then, as Deb started to allude to, reviewing the accuracy certification statements before they're signed. I like to say that while this is a time to ensure accuracy, this is the last time to ensure accuracy, and by no means the first. You should be working to review those data elements prior to getting to the point where it should be signed, or even prior getting to the point where you're running your ACS. And we'll get into that a little bit farther too, in terms of ways to approach things, because there's tremendous amounts of reports and resources available to help you review your data well before the accuracy certification step.
So what kind of supports and resources do we have for you? If you submit data, you know we have manuals. Those manuals tend to be technical. They've changed over the years. We have a data collection calendar. We put that out in the summer by August on purpose to allow you to plan internal calendars to meet the deadlines. We have collection how-to guides. Much of the information here was drawn from the original PIMS manual, where we tried to give you everything in a one-stop shop. But those who submit data know that sometimes the same templates are used for different collections, and that became confusing. So the manuals are technical. The how-to guides give you so much more than the original PIMS manual ever did to give you all of the information you need to successfully submit data for the various data collections. Every Thursday, we have question and answer webinars. Through the years, sometimes we space those out, not every week, because there isn't new information. That has not been the case this year. Those webinars are taking place for an hour. It is a great place to log on, get information. The room seats 3,000, so there's room for everyone. Maybe get some questions answered you didn't even know you had as a question. We began as a way of answering many people at one time and expanded so much beyond that. Justin always makes sure new information is given to you in those Q&As on Thursday afternoon. PA Secure ID. Justin already spoke about how this is the linchpin. The correct ID for a student is essential. We have 2 staff that are devoted to PA Secure ID. And if you have issues, please contact us. We'll help you. Finding and reporting data under the right ID is essential. And probably one of the biggest eye-opening experiences I have had is how similar students on different sides of the state with very unique names can be. Edna. Edna is our source for names and addresses for school entities. There's a lot of information there that can help you. If the biggest is, frequently we get, what is my NCES ID number? What is my federal number? It's all out there. In our data systems, we rely heavily on the AUN of the LEAs. Each has a unique administrative unit number and the unique school number for each of the schools. It is essential data be submitted accurately with those numbers. If you've had some moving around and changing with school buildings, go out there and double check Edna to make sure you have the correct number. Don't worry, the file will fail if it's not your number, but you can save yourself that work by ensuring it's correct in the first place. The PIMS sandbox. These last 2 things I'm going to talk about, I'm really happy about, I'm proud of. They're things that were brought to you in the last number of years because of things PIMS didn't have in the first place. That sandbox is basically your test environment. Use it. You can submit data in the sandbox prior to a collection opening. We strive to open the sandbox 2 weeks prior to a collection opening. If you utilize the sandbox, you can have a file ready to submit on day 1 with the errors found. Now, there's going to be one caveat here. If your errors are dependent on what someone else submits, for example, your student is found elsewhere, that's not going to show up in the sandbox, but 90% of your errors are going to show up there. Use it. And I know you've heard me say this before. The line at the end of a data collection gets long. You will get your files processed quickly if you're ready to submit on day 1 and day 2. I promise you that. And finally, the data quality engine. The first year that we collected PIMS data was really my first year working in a longitudinal data system. Those of 28 people that have been here as long as I have may recall that I was the person that collected staff data in ESPP prior to PIMS. That was lucky on my part because staff was the single type of data that PDE was collecting on an individual record level. That gave me a huge amount of information that I really at the time didn't even know I needed in how to validate individual records versus aggregate data. The end of that first year, I started running reports, and I would run staff reports based on gender and get one total. I would run staff reports based on years of service and get a different total. And we started looking and said, there are no edits on this data. That's not the case. The data quality engine is there. There are edits on the data. It helps you, it helps me by preventing bad data in the first place. Can it find everything? No, nothing is 100%. But each year, as we collect data and we see major mistakes, we refine those data quality engine edits to hopefully prevent that in the next year. So I know in one hand, it's a pain when you get that stop and you have to give an explanation. All responses from the data quality engine may not mean an error. It could be something that truly changed. Maybe your low income percentage did go up 25% this year. Then just tell us and we'll allow the file to process. But the good thing that's happening here is bad data is not getting in easily. It's getting stopped at the door, which is preventing the need for deletions and big mistakes. Justin?
Some other resources, and as I alluded to before, a strong one is our PIMS reports application. We have a variety of reports that are designed to help throughout the data quality process and make sure that this information is as accurate as possible. As I alluded to, running them kind of in a grouped logic that I'm going to go over here today will help you by the time you get to the ACS. So we have verification reports that will show you exactly what you loaded into the database as a check to make sure what you think you loaded is what you loaded. Those reports run off the verified database and then they are refreshed twice daily into the production database, where you can then run some of the quality control reports that that Deb was alluding to that potentially compare your information to information other LEAs have also submitted, which is not something you can do until you have that information loaded in the data warehouse. Those reports are extremely important in verifying information as well. Also, as she alluded to, there are reports that we as PDE use that in some cases you as the LEA also have access to check errors that we are very much aware of occur on a regular basis, and other areas that we want to make sure to hit on based on our experience to make sure the data is as accurate as possible for you and for us by the time you get to the accuracy certification statement, which is essentially the last report in this process. And a very important one, because it's where you essentially not only sign off to your LEA that the data is complete and accurate, but that's what you're telling us. So that way we know that you've completed this submission and you acknowledge that the collection on your end is complete based on the information you've provided to us. So all very important. The data quality curriculum is another tool and resource available to help LEAs increase their knowledge of data submitted. We have tracks and modules there that are specifically designed for LEA administrators to build their knowledge, as well as data staff to build their knowledge on particular collections. So another tool and resource. The Data Quality Network, one of the main resources that I enjoy, as Deb kind of alluded to with her points, as one of the point of contacts for the Data Quality Network here at PDE, I really enjoy working with those groups of individuals at the IUs. The IUs have a designated point of contact as part of the Data Quality Network to help your the LEAs in that IU's region work together and learn with each other and network surrounding a variety of data governance topics. We regularly meet on a monthly basis in order to present material as well. PD, IU, LEA staff all present at these meetings across a variety of topics, as well as to develop that collaborated network. The Application Support Desk is a great resource. We work with one of our IUs to provide that as frontline technical support for all types of questions you have regarding the applications, creating files, running reports, correcting issues. They have a tremendous amount of experience there, and we rely on them heavily to help us to be there for you as a resource to help answer your technical questions. And last but not least, the Data Summit. You're here. You've recognized that this is a tremendous resource to help you as well.
So at this point, we have two resources for you. If you didn't download these earlier, I suggest you do it now, definitely at the end of this time if you haven't. There's one of these three resources you are going to need during this session. So you may have seen this before. Justin and I presented this last year at a Data Quality Network meeting, and it was specific to last year. We took time to make this a generic calendar so that you can look at the PIMS calendar each year, input the dates, and understand what it is that your LEA needs to do. We've created this template we're looking at now is for you to create your team. So your team may change. Who do I need? You're seeing all the various data collections. You're seeing who you probably would want. Every LEA is different. I can't tell you the title of the person. I can't tell you the name of the person, but you know who has the knowledge of the type of data here. Who could you go to for help with your English learner data? You know, who can you go to help identify economically disadvantaged students? You know, where can I find out if this is a military family?
Deb, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know you have 15 minutes left in the session.
All right,
15 minutes.
Thanks. We'll speed up.
Yep.
Justin, go ahead with the calendar.
As Deb mentioned, we also created a calendar template, which and again, the main thing about these is they're designed to be as generic as possible so that they can be as flexible as possible. Going back to that point that I had made before, we want you to, these templates may or may not be the exact format that you would want. They may or may not work exactly the way you would think. These are just general ideas that we as PDE data quality staff see as common elements across all LEAs in terms of data collection processes. So feel free to tweak them. The goal here is that you want to have something that works for you. And to reiterate the points we've made before, and many a times it's about having a plan in advance. So start, early in the year, start, later in the year, submit early, submit a little bit later, review your data. The goal is to be as proactive as you can be and do what works best for you. Something else too, which we'll get to in a minute, is that you may, need to be at each LEA will be at different points in this process. Some LEAs may have already started this and they're in great shape, or some LEAs may be starting from nothing or at the beginning. We hope that's not the case, but recognize that it may be, and that's okay. The idea would be to take all of this information and work through some manageable goals and check off and write down some high priorities of the next steps that you want to take. So start small and break it up into individual pieces as you work through this.
So Justin, I'm going to drop the timer and combine two things to save time for questions here.
I think that's a good idea. Yep.
So where are you? Where is your LEA? We were going to give you some time to fill this out. Just fill it out as we're talking, as I'm talking and as Justin's talking. Where are you? If you are you lacking? Are you in a developing? Or are you mature in regards to your data governance processes, procedures? Check off where you fit in each of these. You know, in your data team, do you have none? Okay, then you're lacking. Are you developing? You know, there's an acknowledgement of a need for a team, work's begun, but you're not quite there. Or do you have an established team that's supported by your executives? Executive support is essential. What's your approach? No advanced planning? It's just a fire each time it comes around. Is it, you have a project plan in place to meet reporting deadlines, but the processes and procedures don't quite support that yet. So you're developing. Or you have a great project plan, everything's in place and this data is easily submitted. What about supports? Do you have support, or there you are, an island of one or maybe a couple people? You have some support from administrators and other staff, but it's not really a priority to them. You're developing. Or you're mature. Your data team meets regularly. It's consistently and fully supported by your administrators and other staff. Then you're mature in your support. And finally, your training. Does PIMS administrator get training? Are you taking trainings PDE is making available? Are you training your staff? Is your staff getting trained? Do you have some training, but not enough? Or every member of the data team receives the training in what they do, from the secretary that's entering attendance all the way up to the PIMS administrator, to your administrators to understanding it. If you're mature along the way, you're going to score 16 when you add those up. If you're developing all the way, you're going to score 8 when you add those up. You know, I would say if you fall around 8, you're on your way. If you're below 8, well, you have more work to do. And if you actually score close to 16, reach out to us. We're going to want you to do a presentation.
So again, just to summarize the rubric and to follow up on what Deb said, think about these questions as you work through it. Who is on your data team? Do you guys have regular meetings? How familiar are you with these types of resources that we presented to your data team? If there's ones you didn't know about, go check those out. If there's ones that you think members of your team didn't know about, direct them to there. And what data quality processes do you already have in place? What data quality processes do you need to work on? There's a variety of different ways to look at this. And again, no one size fits all. Every LEA is going to have different ways of things to think about as they approach this, but the common elements will persist.
So as you take this information back to work and you identify, you know, what's the immediate things that you should work on for your discussion? You know, what is your biggest personal takeaway from today's discussion? What do you need to do to improve your data quality within your LEA, within your team? What's the first thing that you're going to do when you go back to your LEA using this information? Just think of one step. What can I do? I have no support. Well, who can I go to try to get just one person to support me in this effort? And then build on that. And then what is the biggest personal takeaway for you in your job? How am I going to make data better, easier in my district? We do have a number of questions. Justin's going to share with you first some resources that are available to you, and these slides will be available.
Yes, so just to wrap up, some additional resources, the Data Quality Network, I mentioned that before. We put this link out here, as Deb alluded to. There was a version of this presentation done in November 2019. I know that seems like forever ago, but we wanted to allude to that as kind of the stepping stone for this. So there's other great resources out there in addition to what we're presenting here today, as well as resources from the National Center for Educational Statistics. They provide a wide variety of information and are one of our great federal partners in data quality and data collection resources. So they have information out there about building data governance, building a culture of quality data, which is something that's very important, ways to improve your data collection and reporting. And all of those links are embedded here in this presentation. And I strongly encourage you to look into those. And lastly, just a nice little chart here from this group about how to build and check off steps to make sure data quality is done correctly. Are the requirements known? Is the process designed? A lot of features that we've talked about already throughout this presentation. Is the process well documented? Is it well implemented? Are you verifying and comparing the data? And then lastly, is it being reported correctly? So just to wrap up from my end, and then I'll turn it back over to Deb quick. Thank you for attending today. We hope that this was a very valuable presentation and information for you. And we are open to any questions or thoughts you have regarding this topic with your LEA.